A perfectly executed strike. If we've learned one thing from Trump's tenure so far, it's that he feels he can do as he pleases. This week's strikes on Syria are a textbook example of how far this can go. To batter a sovereign country with over 100 retaliatory missiles in response to a chemical attack, you'd have to be 100% sure that that attack happened. Instead, America's conviction was built basically on online video and sources.
This conclusion is based on descriptions of the attack in multiple media sources, the reported symptoms experienced by victims, videos, and images showing 2 assessed barrel bombs from the attack, and reliable information indicating coordination between Syrian military officials before the attack.
Well, my colleague Ken Delaney and I have learned today that the U.S. now has blood and urine samples from some of the victims of this attack in Syria last weekend, and that those samples, according to U.S. officials, tested positive for chemicals.
Toxin samples, verified witness and victim accounts provided by a UN-backed chemical organization would have served as rock-solid proof. But Trump apparently figured, why bother launching the strikes just hours before the OPCW probe on the ground was scheduled to start. Experts are bound to proceed with the investigation anyway, but in the face of the strikes, they are presented with an additional challenge now, holding up the very relevance of the probe. Another obligation for an attack of this kind, UN approval. But that's not a chapter of international law for Trump, just a nuisance.
It is my duty to remind member states that there is an obligation, particularly when dealing with matters of peace and security, to act consistently with the Charter of the United Nations and with international law in general. The UN Charter is very clear on these issues.
But even with the UN brushed aside, the US Congress has to give the green light for the attack. On paper, it turns out, the Defense Secretary's promise to run the decision with the lawmakers was empty.
It is hard to find a legal justification for that military strike in Syria absent congressional approval. So whatever you decide to do, I would hope you would include the legislative branch.
We will be reporting to Congress.
And finally, allies. In ideal circumstances, they'd be rallying en masse beside Washington, unleashing their joint wrath on the enemy. This time, most US partners, while giving their verbal support, have sought to avoid complicity.
We must say, as we Italians always have, that if we need a long-term solution to the Syrian crisis, we not only need to respond to crimes, but first of all work towards peace.
Germany will not take part in possible military action. I want to make it clear again that there are no decisions. But we see and support this, that everything is being done to send a signal that this use of chemical weapons is not acceptable.
None of the formal boxes checked, but the mission is accomplished. Ignoring all the legalities and almost deliberately rushing headlong into war, Trump has once again shown the only right way is his way.